It's more than just a show. It's community. It's the Stillwater Morning Scramble with Steve Daniels on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Hey, I want to talk about the Monday meeting, a week ago Monday, because it was a town hall, and we had talked that morning, I recall, because we were saying, in the past, sometimes we don't always have strong turnouts for this. And there was an amazing turnout for the town hall.
It was fantastic. Room was packed. We had 21, 22, somewhere around there, speakers that signed up and came and spoke to us. Appreciate a ton all the work the city staff, marketing staff did to publicize that. Michelle Charles at the newspaper did a story about it ahead of time. I was on here. Other folks were around talking about it. So a lot of publicity went into getting that event sort of out there and known, and I think the turnout reflected that effort. So it was a good discussion. It was very open-ended. We sort of said at the beginning, we're not making decisions tonight. We're not trying to pick option A or B at this point. We want to know what people's feelings are, and there was good discussion. I think I think all the speakers were prepared and respectful, and it wasn't just arguing about little things. It was presenting kind of big picture, really almost philosophy about streets and what needs to be done. And there are the folks who are who just want to get street surfaces in better shape, which is absolutely a priority for us. There are folks who want to focus more on public transportation and alternative transportation, sidewalks, bike lanes, that sort of thing. There's a lot of opinions out there. We also put up just this week, we did a flash vote poll on transportation, really kind of around alternative transportation. How much do you walk or ride, or do you do that for transportation purposes, or do you just do it for recreation? And then kind of a breakdown of how people would spend. If you had $1 to spend on streets, how would you break it up? Would you put all 100 pennies on pothole repair, or would you put, would you break it up to build new sidewalks? Would you do, so I think those results that, those are really quick, sort of short polls. We don't have those out there for a ton of time. It's kind of to get a it's a polling sample of what opinions like. So I'm looking forward to going through and seeing those results too.
Anything really surprise you? You had, I think, 21 speakers, it seems like.
We did, yeah. And one of the things that surprised me a little bit was the number of speakers who talked about signal light timing.
I remember you saying that did.
Yeah.
That didn't really surprise me as much.
I guess I've never really, somebody that I work with came when we had first opened the intersection at Hall of Fame and Western, the new intersection there by what we used to call Thrill Hill, that intersection, and it was signalized now. And when they opened that up, I had somebody at work who said, "Man, I sat through like 2 of those left turn lights the other day because it just is only on for like 4 cars to go through." And so we looked at that and fixed it. But that was like, it's a new intersection, and we were tuning it up. But that was honestly, it was good to hear. It was helpful that number of people who feel like there is an issue with signal timing. It was nice. Monty came up and said, "Hey, we do have, these are timed. A lot of them are timed, and they're sensors, and we have an overarching system that kind of tries to keep track of all that stuff, and we have cameras and stuff so we can see if there's traffic waiting at a light on a lot of those intersections. But it's good to know that there's an issue there that we need to continue to
I doubt
improve.
that there's a city that doesn't complain about it, because because sometimes I look at the clock on mine. It takes me 7 to 9 minutes to get to work.
Yeah.
I think it was last Wednesday, because I think Scott Petty was in here too that morning. There are 11 lights, which I wouldn't have realized that. 11 lights between my house, which is over by Boomer, and here. 11 of them.
Yeah.
And so I had watched this meeting, and I heard all the talk there, and so I'm paying attention to it this morning. I hit 11 greens that morning. How's that?
That's pretty good.
That's pretty amazing. Now, it's before 6:30. I think it changes a little bit as you get later.
Yeah.
But usually that doesn't happen. But usually the most I'll hit is probably 3 reds, something like that. So usually I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I think it really just depends on the day and the time you go through, and it's a very complex system, right? Because you are trying to time lights through town so that people aren't stopping all the time necessarily, but you're also, I mean, signal control lights, traffic lights are there to help control traffic too. We don't want, if the light's green straight through every time you go through, traffic speeds up. You have that, it becomes a little less safe sometimes. I mean, sometimes traffic control lights are there to keep traffic slower and to get you to have to slow down and stop more often. So there's just a lot of complex factors that go into it. But it was an issue that came up more than I thought it would.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think that was going to be an issue that came up. I figured we were going to talk about street surfaces pretty much the whole
In different
time.
parts of town, it may be different. At different times of the day, I think it is.
Yeah,
So,
it is, yeah. And there's just those some days where you're just hitting everything, and it certainly feels like it's a problem. But
and the bike community is always well represented.
yeah, lots of folks that came out and talk about bike lanes and the availability of alternative transportation means, and that there's varying levels of how committed the city can be. The city passed a complete streets policy a few years back, I think really even before I was on, where when we do transportation projects, basically we have a commitment to consider all the different ways people are going to use those streets, right? It's just not just going to be cars that use the street. There are going to be bikes, there's going to be folks, pedestrians, there's going to be scooters, there's going to be, different modes of transportation. And when we do a street project, we want to at least be considering all those different pieces of transportation that are happening. And there's a lot of, like I live in the southwest part of town, and a lot of the streets where I live and work, my office is on Sanger Road. There are no sidewalks in front of,
Right.
the little office park that I work in, since it's relatively new, and after the city passed an ordinance that said when you build a new development, you have to build a sidewalk in front of it. So there's a sidewalk in front of my little development, but doesn't connect north of us
Right.
or south of us, right? And it's one of those proverbial sidewalks to nowhere
Right.
that everybody complains about. But we have that policy in place because you can't get down Sanger Road or Country Club Road or a lot of these streets in some of our neighborhood areas on a sidewalk. You can't, I live a mile from the Walmart. I would walk or ride my bike to Walmart if, on days where I'm just going to go run down and grab something real quick. But I can't get down there
Right.
without walking on the side of Country Club Road that has no sidewalks, it has no shoulders. It's built just for cars. And that's something that we really do need to address as a city. And there were a lot of folks who brought that kind of point up. But then the counter argument to that is that, most of the people who are around here are using cars, and shouldn't most of the money be dedicated to helping make sure that mode of transportation is flowing well?
When you look toward the future, do you see more bus transportation? Is there a need for that?
I think we will see more public transportation options. I think we need to see more public transportation options. I think people are willing to use that if it's available. When I lived
just
in-
the game day buses, Will.
Yeah.
I mean, they're awesome.
people who park downtown,
Yeah.
for free and then ride the bus over. I think people are more, I think most people realize that the public transportation stigma, it's going to be a gross bus or something. None of that's actually true. Certainly not of any of our facilities
Right.
around here. And I think a lot of people would say, man, if it was even reasonably convenient, I would use it, right? I would be willing to walk a half a block down to the bus stop and take the bus in if it was available to me. Yeah, I think we're going to continue to see expansion. Tulsa's new rapid bus system that they're building. You see Oklahoma City's new streetcar system. You're seeing cities and communities recognize the real efficiency of having public transportation options. And we had speakers at the meeting on Monday that talked about needing to have a bus stop by the hospital on 12th Street so that people can get out there. because
that's
it
something
would.
when that came up, I had never thought about that.
Again, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not something that
Right.
I hadn't heard that. Nobody had brought that issue to me, and it wasn't something I thought about. Right? I don't ride the bus. I drive my car if I'm going to go down there, and so, but there's a good portion of our community that needs that service.
Sure.
and
They do have, by the way,
wants to use that
they have
service.
valet service at the hospital. We should
do.
mention that.
Yep,
So.
they do,
And that's free.
And and the bus serves the main hospital on 6th, right? So this was the hospital
The 12th.
offices on 12th Street, where the doctor's offices are, and this was specifically one of the pediatricians that works over there that was saying, we have issue with patients who need to come bring their kids, but they use public transportation, and there's not and so they don't come to appointments sometimes because there's not a transportation option for them. And that should be a real concern for our community. I mean, I know it's, maybe most of us don't have to worry about that issue specifically, but we as a community, that person not being able to get to the doctor has an impact, a larger impact on the community, right? That,
sure.
If those kids are now sick, then, maybe, now they're going to school and they haven't been treated by a physician, and that creates an impact, or they're not able to go to school now, and that creates an economic impact on our community when we have people who aren't able to get to school and obtain education, that sort of thing. So it has a larger impact on us. I think one of the things we did talk about at the meeting was trying to make sure that when we're making transportation decisions, we're not just solving immediate problems, right? We certainly want to solve immediate problems. We have street issues and bumpy roads and streets in bad condition that just need to be solved now, and that's absolutely true. But if all we do is focus on the immediate needs and we never plan for those future needs, and we never look 20 years down the road and say, gosh, our airport is going to be busier in 20 years. We're certainly working for it to be busier in 20 years. This hospital facility on 12th Street is going to be busier in 20 years. We need to plan for that now, and we need to spend money now that plans for those 20-year needs. And I think that's one of the difficult parts, when we have so many immediate problems that we want to make sure we're solving, especially. But
it's kind of like taking a payday loan. You take care of, you keep the lights on today, but what's going to happen down the road?
Exactly, and that's when Monty. I think if you didn't come to the meeting on Monday, or you haven't watched it yet, it is on YouTube. It was from June 10th. It's a long meeting, but take the time to sit down and watch it, especially at the beginning with Monty Carnes talking about sort of the history of transportation in Stillwater. I mean, him talking about how most neighborhood streets in Stillwater weren't even really paved until the 60s and 70s. And they were, for the most part, they were paved by assessment districts, where the people who lived on that street paid extra money in their taxes to get their street paved, right? Which is great. It got all those streets paved, but guess what? Nobody was paying any money for maintenance, right? The community the city didn't have the money to build the streets in the first place. They certainly didn't have the money to maintain them. So the neighbors got together and said, okay, we'll pool our funds and pave our street for us. Great. Well, there's a lot of those streets that were paved in the 60s and 70s that haven't been touched since the 60s or 70s, right? And those communities, they banded together to build them, but we have never come up with a consistent funding source to maintain them. And so when we don't think 20 and 30 years ahead, we end up 20, 30 years down the road and we go, gosh, look at this situation we're in. It's a complex problem. It's something the community has to be engaged with to make sure that we're making good decisions. And one of the first steps would be to engage, to get on there, check out that meeting, and send us your thoughts. We're still debating a lot of that. We'll be discussing what we need to do, but we need to make some decisions soon on where we're going to start investing money so that we can start moving forward.
It was a great idea and a great turnout too.
Yeah, so. And really appreciate that. Great. It's great to see so many people engaged.
Yeah. So hey, good visit. I know you got golf to get ready for. Thanks for coming in as always.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
It's more than just a show. It's community. It's the Stillwater Morning Scramble with Steve Daniels on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.